Well, hi everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to tonight's Joe Chaffee Weather Show. It is coming up on 7:30 Eastern Time on the 7th of May, 2019. What is proving to be, by the way, a very busy night in the land of severe weather, as we have not one, not two, not three, not four, but five tornado watches working in Texas and Oklahoma and points northward. So we're going to be taking a look at that. We'll be taking a look at where our weather is going over the next few days. We talked yesterday about the fact that it looked like severe weather was going to be an issue at least through the first 3 days of this week, and that seems to be playing, and possibly a fourth, and that looks to be playing out. And of course, we have this weekend coming up, which is Mother's Day, and there's some rule that says that the weather has to be nice on Mother's Day. The problem is you can't have it nice from coast to coast and from border to border. It's going to have to rain somewhere, and we do have some issues regarding Mother's Day, and we're going to take a look at the overall pattern. And toward the end, I'm going to do it tonight. Scott Briller had asked me about this. We're coming up on the 42nd anniversary of the May 9th snowstorm of 1977, which was an incredibly rare snowfall, and in a lot of cases double digits for the month of May, that hit parts of New York State and New England. We'll take a look at how that all came about, and we'll do that toward the end. So let's start with the severe weather that's going on tonight. By the way, let me just tell you right off the bat, we didn't have a Joe and Joe show last night because apparently I'm having some kind of Facebook issue with regards to going live. I don't know what the problem is. I sent them a message, so knowing Facebook, I'll probably get an answer sometime within the next 3 or 4 weeks. Hopefully it'll be fixed. There really isn't anything I can do. So while that's going on, it's going to be, there probably won't be a Joe and Joe show until that gets taken care of. So here's SPC's Storm Prediction Center's risk area map. And of course, this morning I woke up and I looked at it and I saw this moderate risk set up. This is the third or fourth time I think we've seen a moderate risk being put someplace in the last 4 or 5 weeks. But we have a moderate risk there up in North Texas and in a small part of western Oklahoma. Of course, you've got a larger area of enhanced and an even larger area of slight. But all those tornado watches are working inside the severe zone. And actually, the western edge of the one in New Mexico goes just outside the marginal risk. So we have potential here. The radar's pretty active. And the first tornado watch is set to expire at 10 o'clock tonight, Central Time. So we'll see if that winds up being the case or if they wind up rearranging some of these chess pieces. Other than that area, there are, of course, you've got the general thunderstorm area, which is rather large, covering much of the lower and middle Mississippi Valley, going west all the way into the Rockies and in parts of California. And you also have a general thunderstorm risk in the Northeast. We're actually working a dying line of showers that is moving southeastward, and I'm going to bring that up on the radar view so we can take a look at that. I assume the sound tonight is okay. I did a little bit of adjusting to try to get rid of some distortion that I noticed being picked up from time to time, so hopefully that works. Okay, so first off, we'll take a look at the national radar, and we'll go to let's go front and center to where all the action is at the moment, and that's back in Texas with these severe weather watches. And that's a pretty impressive line of storms running from southernmost Kansas into the Texas-Oklahoma panhandle, and then continuing to run straight south through Amarillo. Looks like some storms just moved through Amarillo and now heading northward, and then continuing south into Lubbock and a few other cities along the way down into this part of Texas. We also have some thunderstorms and some heavy downpours going on in southeast Texas on the radar right now. So you can see there's a fairly strong feed of tropical moisture coming in, and the cells that are lined up in Kansas also rather impressive at the moment. I think we're going to stay busy here with regards to severe weather for a while in this part of the U.S. Meanwhile, here in the east, we've got a weak cold front that's moving through. There was some rain across much of upstate New York and through central New England and on up into Maine. Now that area is weakening as it moves to the southeast, but we are seeing a weak line of storms that formed to the south of that area, and that is moving southeastward. And here's a close-up view of the radar out of Upton on Long Island, and the line itself has fractured. Those cells were fairly strong as they moved through the Hudson Valley, and before that as they were developing through the Catskills, and they moved southeastward. The top of that line kind of began to fracture as it moved toward Connecticut, and that part is now moving through Hartford in a much more weakened state into central and eastern Connecticut. Meanwhile, the southern edge of that line is running across northern New Jersey and into Rockland County, and this is going to be heading into Long Island. Now, the south wind has kicked in, and temperatures are in the 50s to near 60 on Long Island, while they were still in the 70s, at least at the top of the hour, in inland areas in New Jersey. So those, I suspect that that line that's coming southeastward is going to continue to weaken as it heads towards the coast. There'll probably be a few showers that will survive when they hit the coastline, and then they move out of the way. With respect to SPC, let's go back to the severe weather. This is, you can always get this on the mesoscale analysis from SPC's page, spc.noaa.gov, and you see where those watches all are. It's a nice tight view of what's happening. If we just throw out the surface obs, and you'll notice 80s with dew points, I mean really rich dew points here. You've got dew points in the low 70s that have pushed pretty far inland into Texas, and even up toward Dallas-Fort Worth, you're seeing some dew points around the 70-degree mark, or at the very least in the upper 60s. So this is pretty saturated tropical air that's pushed up in through Oklahoma and also up into parts of West Texas, and the resulting thunderstorms with that, as you can see there on the radar, some of those big cells. We actually have, if you look carefully, there is a working tornado warning. If you're watching this at 7:36 Eastern Time, if you're watching this later on tonight on a replay, remember to do check your local radar and go to your local National Weather Service forecast page, and you can access that by going to weather.gov so that you can have the absolute latest information when it comes to severe weather. We're going to have this going on through a good portion of the night. By the way, if you've never been on this page, it's really useful because if you go to the side here, it'll give you the current products, and you can hover over each one and pull up each individual watch box that is placed. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tornado watches. This was the first one that was issued, and it's valid until 10 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm sorry, Central Time. The second watch box kind of extends the first one, and they now have further south and west, and that goes till 11 o'clock Central Time. The third watch box was put up for southern Kansas and parts of northwestern Oklahoma till 11 o'clock, the fourth Eastern Central Time. The fourth one is in northeastern New Mexico, southeastern Colorado until 10 o'clock Central Time, and the most recent one was issued at 5:35 p.m. till 11 p.m. And I think what they did at that point was just kind of fill in the blanks. They had all these areas covered, and there must have been this sort of gaping hole, so they added this fifth watch box. Very, very busy night indeed, and I think we're going to probably wind up with a busy day for tomorrow, because here's the risk area that we see for Wednesday, and the area shifts a little further to the east and out of the western part of northwest Texas. You get that out and now moving into central and eastern Texas, northwest Louisiana, southern Arkansas, enhanced risk and that big area of slight risk that runs all the way up through Arkansas, Oklahoma, East Kansas, Missouri, just about the whole state of Missouri, southeastern Iowa, and a portion of western Illinois. Marginal risk up north of Chicago and through Indiana, and then running southward from there down through Kentucky, western Tennessee, slicing Mississippi in half, and then running along the Louisiana and Texas coast. And as far as remember yesterday we had the risk area being indicated for day 4, which is now the day 3. Looks like they've pared it back just a little bit, but they're still showing slight risk in some of the same areas that are going to be under slight risk for tomorrow. This has been a very slow-moving week with this, this whole system. Texas getting impacted by severe weather for much of last week, and that just pretty well continued on into yesterday and today, and then of course tomorrow. And there's still some lingering impact here going on with respect to Wednesday in the Gulf states here. So let's take a look at what's happening. The flow you'll see on the GFS model and on other models are pretty much going along with this. You've got this really strong south-southeast flow coming deep out of the Gulf of Mexico. So the flow is really very tropical, shooting up into Texas and points northward, and then kind of loops around and goes northwestward up the Rockies, even producing some snows in some of the higher elevations back through parts of Colorado, Wyoming, and on up in through Montana. So the mechanism here is very effective, pulling all that tropical moisture northward, even to where there is some residual cold air. You've got a cool high sitting up over Lake Superior with some chilly air over the Great Lakes. And in the east, of course, you've got this cold front that is moving through. And here it is on the surface map. They actually have it drawn as a stationary front at 5 o'clock, but it is sinking southward. It may have temporarily stalled out when they analyzed it, but it is moving southward. And I think, by the way, it's going to move far enough south so that my area, a lot of my area that I cover on a daily basis, which is pretty much eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, including New York City, Long Island, Philadelphia, all in that zone, and the Hudson Valley, of course, the lower Hudson Valley. We may wind up having a pretty decent day tomorrow with partly sunny skies, but you'll notice the temperature changes that go on south of the front today. We were in the middle to upper 70s in some places, and on the other side of the front right now, temperatures across upstate New York are mostly in the low 50s. So that's a pretty decent shot of cool air that's going to be coming in, and we're going to have a northeast wind developing, so it'll be somewhat onshore-ish, if that's a word. That'll hold the temperatures back considerably. Some places are going to be a good 10 to 15 degrees cooler tomorrow than today. And as we follow that frontal boundary, and that's been the story for the weather the last couple of weeks with these stalled out frontal boundaries, 40s right now, 40s and 50s across the Great Lakes and in the northern plains. That's that cool high that's building down. And of course, this frontal boundary runs back through Kansas and western Oklahoma, northern Texas here, creating that battle zone. And you'll notice the temperatures all through Texas and into Louisiana. They're all into the 80s, and those dew points have really shot up in areas to the east. As the severe weather shifts tomorrow, it's going to be shifting in an area where the dew points have been really climbing. You start to you go back further east into Mississippi, and then eventually into Alabama. You start to get the dew points in the low 60s and 50s in Georgia. Where I'm headed, by the way, on Thursday, we have dew points down in the 50s with temperatures up in the low and mid 80s, and some 90-degree readings showed up today over parts of northern Florida, stationary boundary drawn right across the middle of the state. And I think that really represents a separation of the dew points, because the dew points in northern Florida are, for the most part, in the lower 60s, lower or middle 60s, where you have the dew points down in South Florida are in the low 70s. So I guess they decided to draw a frontal boundary there the air being slightly drier to the north of it. I don't know that it makes a huge difference with regards to having to put the frontal boundary. And then, of course, you see that stationary front that snakes up the Rockies into low pressure that's in western Colorado and another low in southern Idaho. So very much a springtime map with a springtime battle zone that has set up and is going to play through here over the next few days. So here's tomorrow overnight. The GFS pretty bullish there with precip in western Oklahoma. We showed you yesterday, and we'll put up WPC's map in just a little bit. The excessive rainfall areas kind of makes sense. And now that shifts tomorrow as we go into tomorrow afternoon into East Texas and Arkansas. Some pretty hefty rains there. Also some hefty rains up in northern Missouri and in parts of Iowa where we have a risk area. Low pressure is going to run up to the northeast toward the Great Lakes. The front pushes eastward as we move through Wednesday and Thursday. Now, in the east, with this high building down, looks like the frontal boundary gets down almost into southern Virginia. You have a southeast isobar through Chesapeake Bay there. So this frontal boundary is probably going to push down a bit further south than was modeled earlier. That's one of the reasons why I was being a little more optimistic with regards to Wednesday with the front. Sometimes you get these highs that build down in Canada this time of year and in New England, and you get this dry push of air that pushes further south than advertised. And because of the fact of where the high is, and you're not getting a really solid ocean fetch, low clouds I don't think are going to be a problem tomorrow. They will be a problem, I think, on Thursday with east and southeast winds, a warm front to the south, and we're going to have one of those days where it's just going to be sitting in a lot of clouds. Although you go northeast up into southeastern New England, there still might be enough dry air for a while to at least start the day with sun. And in the meantime, the shower and thunderstorm activity for Thursday continues to shift to the east with the severe weather in that southern flank. And as we go into the end of the week, it kind of looks like the models have lost a bit of the oomph with this system, but it came back a little bit on some of the late afternoon runs of the NAM and the GFS. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to probably have, most of the shower activity runs up into the Great Lakes and through upstate New York and into New England. The coastal areas seem to get spared until Friday. Then it becomes a matter of, okay, how far north does that warm front get? Is it going to struggle through or not? And then the cold front comes through with some showers and maybe a couple of thunderstorms with that. The front is going to stall across the Carolinas and down through the Gulf states, and you can see on Saturday you start to get precip developing there. And in the meantime, high pressure builds in, so the Northeast should have a pretty decent day on Saturday. I think definitely the better of the 2 weekend days. And now Mother's Day becomes a question of timing, because I'll roll it back. Notice that while all this is going on in the Gulf states, you've got a low that's coming down from Canada into northern Minnesota. There's northern energy there with a shortwave trough that's going to pick up this southern system and lift it northward. The GFS is a little faster on this run, advancing rain up through New Jersey Sunday morning, and it reaches New York City by early Sunday afternoon. So if you've got Mother's Day plans, the timing is going to be a big question here. Does the rain come in late morning, early afternoon, or does it hold off until late afternoon or evening? I think we'll get that resolved in another day or two. I was sort of betting on maybe the later arrival. GFS seems to have moved it up a little bit on this late run, so let's see what the models do overnight and tomorrow. But look, we're going to get into some rain at some point later Sunday night into Monday, and that low goes out off the Virginia coast. We just saw that happen last weekend. We'll get some rain here. Doesn't produce a whole lot Sunday night, but it does produce some rain during the day on Monday, and then after that, looks like we might see weather conditions improving. Look, and by the way, the setup here is very similar to what just happened. Low goes out underneath. We dry out on Tuesday this time, which would correspond to the weather we had yesterday, and Wednesday of next week could be much like today, where we have sunshine and warmer temperatures, and another cold front is dropping down from the north that's going to move through and potentially stall out for later next week. Model has a different idea here because it looks like it brings down something in the northern stream and suppresses a system well to the south, but that could be the usual GFS suppression that it likes to do in the longer term. So I always remember my idea of the fact that with weather, history doesn't necessarily repeat itself exactly in a pattern, but things do tend to rhyme. So we seem to be getting this sort of repetition between how these systems and how these weather events are evolving out in the longer term. So here's what the upper air looks like. I'm not going to do the paint box today because not very much has changed since yesterday. It's all really been about the block up to the north, and in Greenland, you see it here on the upper air. You have a pretty suppressed Canadian jet. This is a pattern that I think the winter weather lovers would have loved to have seen something resembling this. It would have made for some interesting action back in January and February, but as always, these things don't always, they don't follow the calendars exactly the way you might like. Going into Thursday and Friday, of course, you get a bit of ridging here in the east. The surface is causing, getting that surface high and the cooler air. It warms up aloft, but the bottom levels of the atmosphere are a different story. Strengthening trough in Canada that swings through, and we get a ridge now building up in the Pacific Northwest. The flow is split. You've got energy that's coming down in the northern stream. You've got some southern stream energy that's getting kicked out by that upper low that's off of California here. Some of that energy gets kicked out into New Mexico and Texas, merges with the trough in the east, and then gets kicked away. And of course, you still have some remnant energy with a couple of upper lows sitting near Lake Winnipeg for the latter part of next week, only as I indicated with what it showed at the surface. Now you got a trough coming into the west, so it tends to want to suppress that system out, and you start to get the ridge to build back in the east again. Very interesting. It's all of this is very interesting to watch evolve over time as we the breakdown of the polar vortex up way up north, the spring process. With rising pressures up in the polar region and the vortex just disappearing, and the jet continuing to get pushed further south, and we're just going to have to wait longer for that part, the suppressed jet, to lift up further north and get us into some semblance of summer. By the way, notice in the long range, look at that Pacific jet. It's a ruler. I mean, you've got this monstrous west to east flow across the three-quarters of the Pacific, going all the way into Southern California with with troughs coming in. Watch how busy that Pacific jet is. Okay, starting from late this week. That upper low is sitting off Southern California, shooting that energy eastward. But then take a look at west of there, and you start to see all this energy coming east with trough after trough after trough coming into the west. That Pacific jet, which we saw how unrelenting it was through much of the winter, is still doing its work in keeping things very, very busy. And, if it keeps sending these weather systems along in this pattern we're in, I think we're going to also continue to see very busy, severe weather activity going forward in the next 10 days to 2 weeks. Until we can get that jet to pull out, it is going to be, it's going to be busy in the land of severe weather. Okay, so let's look back to to May 8th, 1977. And this is courtesy of metrocenter.com up in Canada. These maps are great, and their website is great if you want to go back and look at history here. But here's the upper air, the colors there. There's the jet stream. your darker blues, they're your upper lows, and of course you've got the surface superimposed on it. And this is the day before where we had low pressure that was sitting off of Nova Scotia. Not an especially deep low, but there was a low there. And you see how that 1012 isobar is stretched out to the Carolinas. Meanwhile, the upper air is doing the same thing. You've got an upper low that's at about 50 north and 50 west, what we call the 50-50 low. And that is stretching back westward to another upper low south of James Bay. And as we go forward in time, what happens is that the upper low in Newfoundland just kind of sits there, and it forces the James Bay low to drop southeastward. And now we're still in May 8th. I'm going to just try to keep moving this forward, but that whole trough is just, that whole arm is coming around, and it's going to create another surface low. And we're talking about some fairly cold air aloft here that got involved. When I show you the snowfall map, you're going to see pretty much where all the elevation is, because that's where they got the big snow amounts. And here we have, a surface low on, this was actually at 8 p.m. on the 8th, sitting east of New Jersey, south of Long Island, and the trough in the upper atmosphere, basically getting stretched like a rubber band from south of Greenland and east of Newfoundland, west-southwestward into western New York State and almost there into western Pennsylvania. And by morning, you had a 997 surface low east of New Jersey, south of Long Island. So think about the wintertime. You've got a cold high for the time of year anyway. You've got a cold high over Lake Superior, and the upper low is sitting right in upstate New York there, that darker blue. So if you want to take a guess, there was probably an upper low just west of Albany this is at 8 a.m. on the 9th, and now we're at 2 p.m. We've got a 995 low southeast of Nantucket. The upper low came right over northern New Jersey and New York City, and I can remember sitting in a political science class in high school with one of my favorite teachers, Dennis Micah, who I hadn't seen in so many years, and then I got to see him back about a year or so ago. That was an absolute thrill. Actually, it was a little more than that now. So going back to 2017, so that was at my. It's coming up on 2 years ago at my 40th high school reunion. But here you have the upper low. I remember sitting in his class, seeing the grapple and snowflakes coming down, and he asks me what was going on. I said, well, there's this giant upper low up there, and he was kidding around, and he said, I guess we all should look up to see where the big L is in the sky. But that kind of was what it looked like. Anyhow, that low sitting southeast of Long Island. We had, you think about this surface in January or February or March or December, and you're going to get some decent snows out of it. That low hardly moved, by the way. At 8 o'clock in the evening, it was a 991 low sitting southeast of Cape Cod. So you got clobbered with snow in elevated areas, and going into the morning of the 10th, the low is literally inching its way east-northeastward down to less than it's on a 990 or less than a 990 low, and then finally starts to move away later in the day on the 10th and starts to move out as the trough finally swings around. One thing about this time of year, when you get these upper lows like this, or in any fashion when you're dealing with these upper lows that cut off, slow. We're talking slow. Things take a while to move along. Look how long it's taking that severe weather axis to move from Texas into the Gulf states, basically taking 3 days. This is just a time of year where everything starts to come to maybe not to a grinding halt, but it takes a lot longer for a weather system to move across the country. The jet stream flows are getting weaker. It takes more time, which is great if you can wind up in a situation where you get a decent dry air mass that you could string together 2, 3, or 4 nice sunny days in a row here in the East. We can only dream of that. This is a map. These are the old maps that you used to be able to order from the Weather Service here, and this is how it shows its plot. It doesn't have a date and time set here, but the numbers might be difficult to see. But you got a lot of spots. You think about the fact that we're talking about the 9th of May, and you have a lot of spots there with temperatures in the lower 40s or even near 40. And in fact, I could even see a few mid and upper 30s up in parts of New Hampshire and in through Massachusetts. And here's a map plot of the total snowfall. So you're looking at amounts up to 2 feet plus in parts of the Catskills. You had amounts up to 2 to 4 inches with some 8-inch amounts in the northeastern Pennsylvania in the Poconos. You didn't really have to go that far north. Southern Ulster County, northernmost northeastern Sullivan County, a little plot there of 13 plus. And then, of course, you go up into Litchfield County in Connecticut, 20 inches plus, on up into the Berkshires, a foot plus. And also go into eastern Massachusetts. We had not too far west of Boston, you're talking about snow amounts in the 12 to 20 inch range. This was really, for this time of year, this was an absolutely incredible snowfall. New York City, I believe, got a trace. There's a 2-inch plot there up in northern Westchester County, right along and into Putnam County. So right along Route 84. Route 84 seems to have been a bit of a dividing line here between accumulating snow and no accumulating snow. But the elevated areas just went gangbusters with this particular storm. Haven't seen anything even remotely resembling something like this since. It's been a long, long time. Okay, so back to let's just go back. I want to just get WPC's rainfall for the next 7 days, and of course we it's been doing this for a few days, so we've already had rain on top of whatever's forecast for additional rainfall, and you're looking at a fairly large area there in eastern parts of Texas and much of northwestern Louisiana and central Louisiana, southern Arkansas, with 5-inch plus rainfall amounts. So it's very, very impressive on top of what has already fallen. And you have fairly sizable rains that are extending into Mississippi, Alabama, parts of southern Tennessee, and in an area in the southern Appalachians. In the Northeast here, with regards to weather events over the next 7 days, we're just generally in that blue area. So we're talking about anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches spread out with the weather event on Friday and the weather event that is coming up for later Sunday into Monday. And a stripe of slightly higher amounts across southern Virginia and into northern North Carolina with event number 2, where that's where your surface low is going to track with regards to the second system that is coming up for Sunday. We do have, just really fast, just bring up the watches and warnings map for tonight. We're at 8:01 Eastern time now on the 7th of May. But we do have flood watches up for northeast Texas, northwest Louisiana, and for a good chunk of central and southwest Arkansas. Also, flood watches up for parts of central and western Missouri, Kansas, and southeastern Nebraska. We have those 5 working tornado watches, and if you look very carefully, you can see that we have some working tornado warnings at this time, and also a few flash flood warnings. And I'm wondering, those are probably winter storm watches that are up for parts of Colorado. Let me just take a look here for parts of the Rockies there. I believe those might be winter storm watches. And yeah, they are winter storm watches. I just pulled up Grand Junction, Colorado, where it is 72 at the moment. But they're not in the winter storm watch area, but Aspen is. So just for laughs, I'm leaving the watch map up here for a second. But just for laughs, so Aspen is 60 at the moment. They're forecasting a low of 32 tonight, a high of only 42 tomorrow, 27 for the winter storm watch period, which is Wednesday night, Thursday, and Thursday night. They're forecasting 27, 38, 28, and with snow, they're not going for a whole lot in Aspen itself, but I just want to take a look at what they're talking about here with respect to their winter storm watches up. 5 to 10 inches. So they're talking about Gore, the Elk Mountains, the Central Mountain Valleys, and Flat Tops from Wednesday evening through late Thursday night. So they're specifically talking about those areas. So this would include Aspen, Vale, Snowmass, Buford, Buford, I believe that's how it's pronounced, and Trappers Lake. I think I have some folks semi-regular that watches from out in Colorado. So he's been posting up snow maps and in talking about the late winter, the very late winter-like weather that is occurring in spring where he happens to be. So I'm going to come back to the chat board here. And Chris Alley, you're coming and going. You're saying good night. We'll see you soon on the next one. November 18th, 2002, was that a similar to the 77 or not on such a grand scale? I got to do a little, May 18th, 2002. I got to do a little research on that, Timothy, so I'll take a look and see what I can find out about that. 4 inches, says Mark G. from the 77 storm in western Connecticut north of I-84. Definitely elevation. You know, if it was going to happen in early May, it's got to happen in elevated areas. That has to help. If it helps at any time of year, it helps in April and May and in November. Things tend to get equalized quite a bit as you head into the winter months in December, January, February, and at least through the first part of the month of March. The ocean wind has come in, James NASCAR on Long Island, where it's 59. And Dwight Jones, I think you're new to the board. Welcome aboard. Enjoy yourself. It's a very lively crowd in the chat. In Louisiana, I'm supposed to get heavy rain and possibly severe weather. I'm supposed to get 3 to 6 inches of rain. I would concur. And by the way, I worked in New Orleans back many years ago from 1983 to 1986. I worked at WVUE-TV in New Orleans with Bob Breck. I don't know where in Louisiana you are. Bob Breck has since retired, God bless him, and he had a very successful career there in New Orleans. He was a big star there, and now he's doing fun things like fishing on a regular basis. Bach 505, yeah, EDD has been down. It's still working at home. I opened it up when it was working, and I never closed it off. So I noticed, I've noticed that my map at home is still working. So I'm not even attempting. I'm not going to even shut it down. I'm going to leave it up while it's working because I don't know what's going on over there with the Weather Service with some of their sites that may have some issues. I know that the Mount Holly radar in New Jersey has been down for quite a while, and I'm guessing they have some kind of parts that they needed to order for it, and they're waiting for the parts to arrive and getting them installed. And with government, sometimes these things take quite a bit of time just to get it all done. Yeah, I can see you guys are talking about the ground clutter. Now, sometimes on the radar ground clutter, you get to see some really weird things, including bird flights and swarming insects and that sort of thing. So don't be too shocked if that happens every once in a while. Wainwright, Alaska, reporting Alfred Phillips, Western Arctic coast region melting with no sunshine, warm weather. The wind is melting it all. I bet it is. The big, great Jason Nappy, who, by the way, is new to the television world in Lafayette, Louisiana. Jason, I'm sorry, I forgot what station you're working at, so why don't you just go ahead and put it up on the chat board, and also, if you like, put your the YouTube link to your channel for the folks to go over and watch his your live streams. Jason and I go back quite a while, and if you remember back over the winter time, I had him on a couple of live streams, and now he's the Big Cheese at KADN and KLAF in Lafayette, Louisiana, which ain't that far from New Orleans, and you got great food down there. That's one thing. Living down in that part of the U.S., the food was absolutely insane. Every recipe starts with at least 2 sticks of butter and a pint of cream. It's just absolutely amazing. Of course, Jason, you had your crawfish, and I assume that they told you how you're supposed to eat those crawfish. I'm not going to use the phrase because it might be taken in a different context, but you get where I'm going with this. And anybody who's been in New Orleans knows what I'm talking about. Daniel Fitzsimmons, October 29th, 2011. That was another big out-of-season snowstorm in the other direction as far as snow coming into the winter as opposed to going out of it. I did respond, Dan, to your email question. I know you wanted a long-range view for a couple of weeks from now, but let's get a little bit closer on the calendar, and I'll see what I can get for you. And all right, so that's pretty much that pretty much wraps it up. Okay, so for those of you, I've been mentioning the fact that I do have my subscription platform on Patreon, which is more weather intensive. Do a lot of extra stuff there. I haven't really been doing many exclusive live streams on Patreon in the last week or so, mainly because of the fact that the weather's been relatively quiet. I want to save it for when something is really solid going on for much of my area, although I do have a lot of folks that are on there from other spots. And there's the link for you there for Patreon. And by the way, thank you, Jason. You've got my new weather app, which will be updating soon. We're going to be making a few changes, making it a little bit more friendly, with location friendly, where you can it'll automatically go to your location as opposed to having to put it in every single time. So for those of you who don't have the app, you can download it here, and you can pull your forecasted radar up for any place in the U.S. So it'll work anywhere, even though its main focus from my standpoint is northern New Jersey, New York City, Long Island, southern Connecticut, and the Hudson Valley. So there is the link for that. So please make use of it. And as I said, and it is free. Yes, the app is free. Patreon is $2 a month to start. And if you'd like to go to one of the higher tiers, by all means, go right ahead. Particularly if you need weather help, it works out pretty well. I got a lot of landscapers and snow removal guys and tow guys that use it on a regular basis, and they're very happy with it. You can get to talk to me anytime you want. You message me, I usually answer you pretty quickly and hold your hand through snow events. As I said from the beginning, in case you missed it, I'm having some technical issues with Facebook with regards to being able to go live from my Facebook page, so I don't think it's working as last I checked. So unless there's a miracle, there probably won't be a Joe and Joe weather show tonight. And that means that tomorrow may be the last chance before I go away for a week. And also a reminder, I will be on the road on Thursday. And I will also I'll be down in North Georgia for about 6 days. I'll be doing live streams from there. I'm just not 100% sure exactly what time of the day I will be doing them. So just keep tuned to your notifications, and I will pre-schedule the live streams as early as I can. This way you have a heads up. Daniel, I'll only say this about the hurricane season, because I'm not really big on getting involved too much in the long range. We do have a weak El Nino, which would tend to favor a little bit of subdued activity in the Atlantic and more active tropical storm hurricane development in the East Pacific. However, the trend is important, and if the El Nino, which is weak, begins to weaken, that might strengthen the hand of Atlantic activity, particularly maybe in the latter part of the season. But I'm not an expert on that sort of stuff, and I'm seeing some of the forecasts from the long-range guys with regards to hurricane season are going for basically what looks like a near average year for the Atlantic side, which is about 12 named storms, 13 named storms, and going, I think I saw a forecast for 5 hurricanes or 5 or 6 hurricanes and 1 or 2 majors. I don't really have a big problem with that sort of idea. But I'm kind of, I guess the best I could do is either agree or disagree with what they're going with. And since, they have the upper hand on the knowledge of how to figure out the long range far more than I do, I'm not going to argue with their forecast. But I would just I'd watch the El Nino. If it starts to weaken, that could mean that the Atlantic activity gets a little bit of juice. On the other hand, if the El Nino holds its own, or perhaps if it suddenly were to start to strengthen as we go into June and July, that could actually cut down the activity as we go into the peak months of August and September. I'll be close to you, Mertha, North Georgia. I'm thinking of taking 81 south, so I'll be driving down 81 Wednesday night and Thursday morning. I'll see if I decide that or take 95. It's going to depend on what how the traffic drives me and how much sleep I get Wednesday night, because I'm going to drive some of the time during the nighttime and then take a quick nap for a couple of hours before I get back on the road. And I'm sure, Johnny Quest, I might get into some rain coming down 81. I hope not, but we'll see. Yeah, I'm going to see how the weather treats me. If it looks like it's going to be a hassle driving down 81 because of the rain, I may just have to take 95. All right, I'm here tomorrow, so we got one more live stream. Jason, good to see you. Lots of luck. I hope everything is going well with you. And yes, I know lots of big trucks, Johnny Quest, on 81, including those brake failure ramps on the side of the mountains. When I saw those, my eyebrows were kind of raised, but at least I know the brakes on my car, knock on wood. I had everything checked yesterday, seemed to be in pretty good shape. Okay, have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.